Today I get the privilege of meeting with Mr. Ken Bouchard here with Sentier Wakefield Trails, SWT. And Ken, it's a real pleasure to have you, so thank you. I would love to hear a little bit of the history behind SWT.
Well, we've been fortunate in the Wakefield area that we have the Gatineau Park with 200 kilometers of trails. But in 2005, there were a lot of different trails, shortcuts, cut acrosses in the village. And there was a group called Wakefield Ensemble, which was sort of an umbrella group for different organizations within the community. And members of that committee wanted to do something about trails. I had just moved to Wakefield and I got involved with Wakefield Ensemble. So what we did was we spent a year looking at all the trails in and around the village, and we came to the conclusion that we really had to start consolidating them. Some of them were unsafe, went on properties they shouldn't have gone on. And so we put together a plan, and we developed a map of what we'd like to do. We had 5 main landowners that made it easy to get permissions from: Vorlage, the Gatineau Park, the NCC, the municipality, the Hendricks family with Hendricks Farm or the Fairburn House. And we put together a plan, and the municipality, since we hadn't been, the municipality didn't know who Wakefield Trails were, so we had to do fundraising on our own. And if you go along the trails, you'll see a lot of cedar log benches. That was our main way of raising funds. We built over 2 years about 14, 15 of them, and we charged people $400, $450 a bench, and we raised monies. And after those 2 years, the municipality started to help us. In small ways initially, $1,000, $2,000 a year, but over the last, let's say 14, 15 years, they have provided almost $150,000 to go into the trails in and around Wakefield. And that has permitted us to also go and, with that type of support, it's allowed us to get monies from other organizations. The MRC, the Trans-Canada Trail, Gatineau Historical Society have all come in and given us a hand to support what the municipality was doing. Wakefield Ensemble then became a part of the Chamber of Commerce. And so Wakefield Trails went out on its own and became a separate nonprofit organization registered with the Quebec government.
So now we're going to jump right into the hot topic of the railway track / path that there seems to be a lot of questions around. And so I'm curious what SWT, what their interest in or their role is with this railway track / path.
Well, prior to the Riverwalk Trail, and that's the trail, the 1 kilometer trail from Mance Road through to Valley Drive, 1 kilometer. And that's the part of the trail we're talking about. That trail was conceived as a multi-use trail by the Chamber of Commerce to help promote tourism. And as you can see, 100,000 people does help to promote tourism. It was built with federal, provincial, MRC contributions, 1.2 million. They decided that they didn't have enough money to properly take up the tracks like Chelsea had done, even though they had 21 kilometers and we only had 3 kilometers. They decided that, especially in some areas of the the village, like in front of the Jamboree, etc., it would have been costly to take up the tracks in some of these areas. So they decided just to put stone dust down. Initially, it was fine. The stone dust covered the tracks and everybody was using them, and it became very popular. Stone dust settles. Railway tracks that have been there 150 years don't settle. They stay in place, and all of a sudden you had the rail tracks being exposed. And it's when that happened that you started having the problems. We're in a funny position because half of our board are avid cyclers, half of our board are walkers. The walkers, me included, we'd love to see the tracks from, we'd like to see the trail being uniquely a walking trail. Or if you want to make it a multi-purpose trail, take up the tracks. That's not going to happen. Even though in cities you sometimes see a brand new street, let's say Elgin Street, being put down and 3 months later being torn up again to put a sewer in. Mistakes are made. Planning, you don't know for sure what's going to happen with what you've planned and put in place until people start using it. I find it's a problem. I find that long-term, the tracks should be taken up. I think there's a certain amount of people remembering the train and strong memories about the train coming in the village, and that may be one reason why people weren't too anxious to take up the tracks. But I think that's a solution. We've presented the problem to the Trans-Canada Trail. How would they like us to handle it? The Trans-Canada Trail used to be on the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. And if the Trans-Canada Trail feels that they do not want to take a chance, well, we may have to move it back there officially. Just put the signs officially on the other side of the street, even though people may continue to use it. But until somebody says, cyclists, you are using this trail at your risk, until there is some adequate signage, I'm concerned.
And at this point, is this municipality's land?
It is.
Okay, so the responsibility falls to the municipality, essentially.
Yep.
Okay, and what about the section of the track that goes to Chelsea? That's the hot topic, I suppose.
That is, we've looked at it. It's a question of about 3 to 4 kilometers. The section closest to Wakefield is very problematic. It's on a berm, a very narrow berm with ditches on both sides. It's elevated. There's been some serious washouts along that first kilometer of trail. There's been 2 major washouts that have never been repaired. In fact, in one place, about 200 meters from Rockhurst, the tracks are in the air, hanging in the air, with nothing underneath. So it is problematic. We've got to remember that the municipality has just gotten a grant from the province of Quebec for 2.5 million to rebuild the 3 kilometers of that section of road of Riverside Drive from Rockhurst through to the quarry, the Morrison Quarry, and the village and the municipality of Chelsea. We have looked at alternatives, and we're actually, there's more pressure being put on us to really on the trails to look at trying to solve that problem. It's been really amplified because of how bad Riverside Drive was in that section. It was in horrible shape. Even cyclists were afraid to drive on it. With the new road, it may be wider. There may be cycling lanes on the edges of it, which is what I would see. I just find, if we're looking at green transportation, like our municipality, Chelsea is, it makes sense to look at a walking trail like that. If there were other trails on some of the properties going up the hills towards the Gatineau Park, towards 105, and that was a base trail, it might make sense to have a trail there where you could have other trails, that the bottom trail is not just an in and out trail, but rather the main base trail to help you go elsewhere. We're working on it. I'll let you know in 6 months.
Is there any grants available, say, for that old railway?
Well, the Trans-Canada Trail, currently the Trans-Canada Trail from Wakefield to Gatineau goes through the Gatineau Park. It's not an ideal trail for multi-use. It can be used by hikers, it can be used by mountain bikers, but mountain bikers don't like a straight flat trail that goes on for 20 kilometers. So the Trans-Canada Trail, and starting to talk with Chelsea Trails, are looking at a trail that could be a parallel trail to the Gatineau Park Trail, Trans-Canada Trail, that would allow cyclists to get, all the way down from Mont-Laurier, Maniwaki, Low, Farrelton, Wakefield, all the way down on a cyclable trail, all the way down to the center of Gatineau. So that is being investigated now about the possibility. And that's why there may start being more pressure about trying to get a 4 kilometer trail from the center of Wakefield down to meet up with the Chelsea trails. If you improve the road and you have a cycling lane on both sides of that road, where the $2.5 million, that could really help solve a problem.
The trail is to be shared with bikers, walkers, dog walkers, the main trail through town. Is there, some people say there's a concern with that? How do you see it a concern, or do you see a...
Right now, there's a concern with the cyclists, and the concern with the cyclists is mainly the concern for them of them hurting themselves. The walkers tend to, the walkers, especially when you have a family group of 3, 4, 5, or 6 walking on the trail, they look like a phalanx coming down the trail. A blitzkrieg that nobody can oppose them. So it's a challenge for cyclists coming down, and I feel sorry for. I know cyclists who live at the south end of the village who have kids, and they bike their kids to school every day. And so I feel sorry for them, because but you then get the hot doggers who with kids on mountain bikes or TMX bikes or even road bikes that come in there because they find the traffic too heavy, road traffic too heavy, or car traffic, and all of a sudden, you can have some major problems. We don't want making walking and cycling an outdoor healthy situation a problem situation.
And you had mentioned before that the reason, say, with the trails with SWT is only walking because of insurance sake. Is that correct?
Well, you see, our trail initially, we only used, when we first built the first 6 or 7 kilometers of trails, they were all in the woods, and they're not trails suitable for skiing or biking at all. The land is not suitable. The way we lay out the trails is just not suitable even for mountain bikes.
Telling me a little bit more about the Great Trail, formerly known as the Trans-Canada Trail, and how it's a privilege that we have that coming right through our village, I would say.
One of the early directors of the Trans-Canada Trail in Quebec lived in Maniwaki, and he was quite interested in bringing the trail. One of the big parts of the trail that opened up almost immediately was what they call the Petit Train du Nord. Are you familiar with that? That's the trail from Montreal to Mont-Laurier. And he wanted to bring it from Mont-Laurier back down towards Gatineau. And so he was involved with that. And the next thing we knew, the trail was coming down, it was crossing the covered bridge. In fact, in many of the early promotional photos of the Trans-Canada Trail showed our bridge. So we've been involved with the Trans-Canada Trail for over 25 years. And the Gatineau Park also, the Gatineau Park immediately signed on to it. And so the trail went through the park and right down into Gatineau and crossed the river, and then got on to the Rideau Trail going destinations further west.
And who are the people using the Great Trail?
Well, we have hosted in Wakefield some people who started in Newfoundland, and we're planning on doing the whole trail, all 25,000 kilometers. We've seen cyclists who have done parts of it in Quebec or Ontario. And then there are the local people who just like to say, you know, we've been on the Trans-Canada Trail. You asked me about geocaching. The Trans-Canada Trail was who got us involved with geocaching, and that 3 years ago, they ran in coordination with the Canadian Geographic magazine, the Great Canadian Treasure Hunt. And that was hiding things along the Trans-Canada Trail, Great Trail, in the Wakefield Gatineau Park area. And that's how Irene was quite interested in geocaching. So she took that and ran with it. And it's been quite successful in the Wakefield area. So that was initiated by the Trans-Canada Trail. Okay.
And then the Trans-Canada Trail, it's a multi-use trail. What are these uses?
Okay. In certain areas, it's mainly walking and cycling. You then can go to, in winter use, you may have snowmobiles. In certain, it depends also who helped with the trail. Who were the clubs who helped with the trail in certain districts? For instance, in the Upper Gatineau Valley, it was skidoo clubs. So the skidoo clubs helped open them. What's interesting is the skidoo clubs in summer are who patrol it so that all-terrain vehicles don't get on that trail. They have authority to actually give people fines that they get on. So it's funny that you'd think that ATVs and skidoos were one and the same, but skidoos in the Gatineau Valley are very, very serious, respectful, and abide by the rules, etc. And they help maintain the trail in the upper, mainly from low north, are skidoos.
So with having the Great Trail here now, are you seeing an impact on the economy? Is this bringing more people in, do you think, or?
Yes, and one of your questions asked me about tracks. Are people counting machines on the trail. 5-6 years ago, when we went to people for money, they kept asking us, well, how many people are using your trails? And so we got together with the Gatineau Park. They loaned us some equipment for one fall. And we put it on 2 of our active trails, Fairburn and over near the McLaren Cemetery. And we were just amazed at the number of people that were using our trails. So we were then able to get from a community organization. In fact, it was a golf tournament who used to raise monies annually for community groups, who gave us a loan of who gave us a grant of $2,500 to buy our initial Trax equipment. Trax is it's a laser beam that just is, when you walk by it, it cuts and counts. So the beam is cut, and at the same time, it adds another number to its file. We then these are battery operated. They're in the field. We've tried to hide them. That has not been successful. We've had a couple vandalized. Um, but they've been extremely successful. We have 5 of them in the field. The last one that was vandalized was on the bridge along the Riverwalk Trail. So we're having to look at maybe changing, maybe not trying to hide them, but tell people what they are. They're not cameras. They're not video machines. They're all they do is count. And so we will have boxes with small signs telling people that. So we don't have, the vandalism doesn't get any worse, because we've lost 2 machines in the last 2 years. But when you say, does it affect? Well, who uses the trails? Well, Bob Milling at the Wakefield Mill tells us that in doing some surveys, 60% of his guests use the trails in Wakefield. And when we've done, besides having the machines out there to count, in the fall and in the spring, we'll do some surveying to back up the numbers, the raw data we're getting. And we have found that about 80 to 85% of the people are not from Wakefield Village who use the trails. Now the numbers, over 100,000 people have walked the Riverwalk Trail in 18 months since we first put the machine there. And in the balance of our trails over the last 18 months, almost 50,000 people have walked those trails, between 45 and 50,000. And during COVID, the numbers have increased. The trails are used 365 days a year. We've even, on our counters, we've even counted people on Christmas Day using our trails. So all of this surprised us because, we don't have somebody out there counting people all the time and to be able to justify our requests for monies. The Trans-Canada Trail has been very supportive, especially when we told them how many people were walking on our trails. They started helping us even more because they could justify helping us.
What got you involved in building trails and your passion for making trails? Because I tell you, I moved here because of the access to all the wonderful play here. So I have to thank you, because this is the reason why I'm here with my kids.
I've been involved with trails. My wife and friends tell me I'm almost more interested in building trails than walking on them. So I've been involved with trails since I was a teenager with the Ottawa Ski Club in the 50s, where there was a group called the Trail Riders that were a combination of high school kids and adult supervisors, volunteers who helped maintain the trails in the Gatineau Park. And we did that. The whole central part of the park was done by the Ottawa Ski Club and not the National Capital Commission or Gatineau Park in the early years. So that's where I got interested. I then got interested in helping with building the trail for the Canadian Ski Marathon. Okay. I then got involved with an outdoor center in Farm Point called Carmen Trails, which was not only an outdoor center, but also a youth hostel.
So I guess lastly, why is it important to have publicly funded and freely accessible trails?
My health, fitness. One of our key sponsors who help us annually with either National Trails Day or Earth Day is Brunet Pharmacy. And if you see the ads of Brunet every second week in the lowdown, they talk about health and fitness and outdoor recreation. And we make a good pair there. In fact, we are now, they've just agreed to help us with their annual annual contribution to run a photo contest. So people have to take pictures of wilderness, birds, animals, or panoramic landscape, or family pictures. So that, and we'll have, we'll have prizes in all three categories, because, this pandemic, it'd be a good way to help people get out on the trails more, and because it's fun. I love it. I have, my hobby is I walk on the trails and I look for very unusual trees. And I'm always taking pictures of unusual trees, and, you can almost make a story around a tree and imagine what it looks like or what it is.
Well, thank you, Ken, for all your time. Just in case, do you have anything else to add for our viewers?
Well, one thing it might be interested, we always have new either trail improvements, and this spring we may have a new trail called the Louis Rompre Trail, which will go from the Louis Rompre Park next to Expedition Wakefield through to the community center. And that will be, if you want an interesting program, is on the building of the trail. And that will be in the spring, once all the permissions are granted, et cetera, to do that, because we're dealing with a wetland there. And there's a lot of hassles and roadblocks that you have to get by if you're dealing with a wetland. Even though it's only about 150 meters long, it's probably one of our more problematic projects, but also I think very productive and interesting and value.
I agree. Thank you so much, Ken. It was a pleasure to meet you and to see the face behind all the great work here in the village.
Well, I'll tell you, the old story, it takes a village to support a child. Well, it takes a village of volunteers to support a trail network.